deep in the swirling mists of an alien world called Zithra, where three suns painted the sky with hues no human eye had ever seen. A lone traveler named Theo stumbled upon something that would change his life forever. Theo was not an explorer by trade, but rather a botanist sent from Earth to study the strange flora thriving on this distant planet. His mission was simple: catalog plant species and return home with data. But destiny had other plans. The air shimmered unnaturally as he trudged through a dense forest of crystalline trees, their translucent leaves chiming softly in the breeze. The ground beneath him pulsed faintly, glowing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed alive. It was then he heard it, a sound so heart-wrenching it froze him mid-step. A cry, high-pitched and desperate, echoed through the alien landscape. Following the noise, Theo pushed past thick vines that oozed luminescent sap and found himself staring at a sight both surreal and heartbreaking. In a clearing bathed in the golden light of one of Zithra's suns, a small creature lay curled up against a jagged rock. Her body glowed faintly blue, her skin smooth like polished glass, and her large, almond-shaped eyes shimmered with tears. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old by human standards, though her exact age was impossible to guess. One of her delicate limbs was twisted at an unnatural angle, clearly broken, and she clutched it tightly while whimpering in pain. "Hey there," Theo said gently, crouching down a safe distance away. He didn't know if she understood him, but his tone carried reassurance. "I'm here to help." She flinched at first, her wide eyes darting around wildly, searching for escape routes. But when she realized he wasn't moving closer, she relaxed slightly. Slowly, Theo extended his hand, palm open. The gesture must have meant something universal because the child hesitated only briefly before reaching out. Her tiny fingers brushed his, sending a jolt of warmth through him, an inexplicable connection he couldn't explain. It took hours to stabilize her. Using supplies from his pack, Theo fashioned a makeshift splint for her injured limb and cleaned the abrasions covering her fragile frame. Throughout the process, she watched him with a mix of fear and curiosity, occasionally letting out soft whimpers that tugged at his heartstrings. By the time night fell, or what passed for night under Zithra's perpetual twilight, she had fallen asleep in his arms, trusting him implicitly despite their vast differences. The next morning, Theo faced a dilemma. Leaving her behind wasn't an option. Whoever or whatever had hurt her might come back. Taking her with him felt equally risky. This was uncharted territory, and bringing an alien child into his already complicated mission could jeopardize everything. Yet, looking down at her peaceful face, he knew he couldn't abandon her. So, with a deep breath, he decided to take her along, naming her Lyra after the soft melody the trees made when they swayed. Lyra adapted quickly to life with Theo, proving to be far smarter than any human child her size. She learned basic commands within days, mimicking his movements and even attempting to communicate using gestures and sounds. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, though Theo often wondered about her origins. Where had she come from? Who were her people? And why had she been left alone? One evening, as they sat beside a bubbling stream filled with liquid silver, Theo noticed Lyra pointing excitedly at the water. When he followed her gaze, he saw reflections of constellations unfamiliar to him dancing across its surface. For a moment, she looked wistful, almost sad, and Theo felt a pang of guilt. He may have saved her life, but he'd also taken her away from whatever home she once knew. Their journey continued, marked by moments of wonder and danger alike. They encountered towering beasts with iridescent scales that roared like thunderstorms, navigated treacherous terrain riddled with sinkholes, and discovered hidden caves filled with glowing fungi that lit their path. Through it all, Lyra proved to be an invaluable companion, her instincts sharper than any tool Theo carried. She warned him of impending storms, led him to edible plants, and even saved his life when a venomous vine tried to ensnare him during a rainstorm. But just as Theo began to think they might actually make it back to his ship together, disaster struck. While crossing a field of shifting sands, they were ambushed by a group of creatures unlike anything Theo had ever seen. Towering bipedal beings with elongated heads and 4 arms apiece surrounded them, their glowing red eyes fixed menacingly on Lyra. They spoke in guttural tones, their language incomprehensible but their intent clear. They wanted her back. Theo instinctively stepped in front of Lyra, shielding her with his body. "You're not taking her," he shouted, though he doubted they understood him. The largest of the creatures let out a deafening roar and lunged forward, forcing Theo to dive out of the way. In the chaos that followed, Lyra screamed, a sound so piercing it momentarily stunned everyone, including the attackers. Seizing the opportunity, Theo grabbed her hand and sprinted toward the nearest cluster of rocks, dodging claws and blasts of energy that sizzled past them. They managed to lose their pursuers in a narrow canyon, collapsing against the cool stone walls as they caught their breath. Lyra clung to Theo, trembling violently, her glowing form dimmed by fear. It was then she finally spoke. Not in words, but in images and emotions transmitted directly into his mind. Flashes of memories flooded him, a sleek silver city floating amidst stars, a woman with features eerily similar to Lyra's holding her close, and then, betrayal. The same creatures who had attacked them tearing her away, leaving her stranded on Zithra. "You're not going back to them," Theo whispered fiercely, pulling her closer. "Whatever they did to you, we'll fix it. Together." Back aboard his spacecraft, Theo pored over every scrap of information he could find about Zithra and its inhabitants. Most records were fragmented, pieced together from centuries-old exploratory missions that had ended in failure. One entry, however, caught his attention, a mention of a race known as the Valith, described as highly advanced yet ruthless, ruling over numerous planets with an iron grip. Could these be the same creatures who had hunted them? If so, what did they want with Lyra? As weeks turned into months, Theo struggled to balance caring for Lyra with preparing for the inevitable confrontation. He taught her rudimentary self-defense, showed her how to use basic tools, and even introduced her to earth music, which she adored. Watching her laugh as she danced awkwardly to an old jazz tune brought a rare smile to his face, reminding him why he'd risked everything to keep her safe. Still, shadows loomed on the horizon. Every transmission received from Earth hinted at growing unrest among the interstellar community. Rumors spread of rogue factions seeking to exploit alien worlds for resources, disregarding treaties and ethics alike. Theo feared the Valith might be part of such a faction, making Lyra's rescue not just personal but political. Then came the message, the one that shattered their fragile sense of security. As Theo monitored communications channels late one night, a garbled transmission broke through. At first, it sounded like static, but then a voice emerged, calm yet commanding. "To the human harboring my daughter, I know where you are. Come home." His blood ran cold. Lyra's real mother? Somehow, she had tracked them down, spanning galaxies to reclaim her child. But why now? And what would happen if she succeeded? When Theo relayed the message to Lyra, her reaction was immediate and visceral. She recoiled as if struck, her glowing form flickering erratically. Images flooded his mind again, this time darker, angrier. He saw flashes of betrayal, abandonment, and pain, emotions too complex for words. Whatever relationship Lyra had with her biological mother, it wasn't built on love or trust. "We don't have to go," Theo assured her, gripping her shoulders firmly. "This is your home now. With me." But deep down, he knew ignoring the summons wasn't an option. Whoever this woman was, she clearly possessed technology far beyond his own. If she could locate them once, she could do it again, and next time, she might not bother asking nicely. Determined to protect Lyra no matter the cost, Theo devised a plan. They would meet her mother, but on their terms. Using the ship's cloaking device, they landed discreetly near the coordinates provided in the transmission. What awaited them was nothing short of astonishing. The meeting point was a sprawling structure carved into the side of a mountain, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the twin moons' glow. As they approached cautiously, a figure emerged from the entrance, a tall, regal woman whose resemblance to Lyra was undeniable. Her skin shimmered with the same ethereal blue hue, though her eyes held none of the innocence Theo associated with Lyra. Instead, they burned with intensity, scanning him with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "You dare defy me," the woman said, her voice melodic yet laced with authority. "Do you understand what you've done?" Before Theo could respond, Lyra stepped forward, her small frame radiating defiance. For the first time since they'd met, she addressed her mother directly, not in images or emotions, but in halting, accented English. "No, go back. Stay with Theo." Her mother raised an eyebrow, seemingly amused. "Ah, so you've taught her your primitive tongue. How quaint." Anger surged within Theo, but he forced himself to remain calm. "She's happy with me." Something you clearly failed to provide. The woman's expression darkened. You know nothing of our ways, human. She is Valeth, born to lead, not cower in hiding. Lead. Theo shot back. Is that why she was abandoned on Zithra? Because leading involves breaking bones and leaving children to die. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then the woman sighed, her demeanor softening ever so slightly. There is much you do not understand. Much she does not remember. Perhaps, she paused, glancing at Lyra. Perhaps we can reach an accord. An accord? Theo bristled at the word, sensing a trap. Still, he nodded warily. What kind of accord? The woman smiled, a chilling, calculating expression. Join us. Become part of our family. Together, we will shape her destiny. And with that, the choice was laid bare. Acceptance or annihilation. Neither option felt right, yet walking away wasn't possible anymore. Not with Lyra caught in the middle. As days stretched into weeks, Theo found himself grappling with the weight of the decision before him. Joining forces with Lyra's mother, whose name he learned was Silra, seemed absurd on the surface. Everything about her screamed danger, from her commanding presence to the sleek, weapon-laden vessel parked ominously nearby. Yet, oddly enough, she hadn't attacked them. Instead, she invited them aboard her ship, offering food, shelter, and answers to questions Theo had long stopped asking aloud. Silra's crew consisted entirely of Valeth, each member exuding the same aura of precision and power. They moved with calculated grace, their elongated limbs gliding effortlessly through corridors lined with pulsating lights. To Theo's surprise, they treated Lyra with reverence, bowing slightly whenever she passed. It was as if she were royalty, a notion that made his stomach churn. Royalty or pawn? He couldn't tell. During their stay, Silra revealed fragments of her story, painting herself as a misunderstood leader striving to protect her people. According to her, Lyra hadn't been abandoned but placed in exile temporarily to shield her from enemies plotting against their family. She is heir to more than you could comprehend, Silra explained one evening, her voice tinged with pride. But the galaxy is vast, and loyalty is scarce. I needed time to secure her future. Theo listened skeptically, his mistrust growing with every word. Exile sounded suspiciously like abandonment to him, no matter how elegantly it was framed. Still, he couldn't deny the bond between mother and daughter. It simmered beneath the surface, raw and undeniable. When Silra knelt beside Lyra, speaking softly in their native tongue, Theo saw glimpses of genuine affection. It confused him. Hurt him, even. Had he misjudged her entirely? Meanwhile, Lyra wrestled with her own turmoil. Initially resistant to Silra's advances, she gradually warmed to her mother's explanations, her glowing form brightening whenever Silra touched her shoulder or offered a reassuring smile. But there were moments, fleeting yet unmistakable, when doubt flickered across her face. Once, while exploring the ship's observation deck, she tugged at Theo's sleeve and whispered urgently, "Stay. Please." That single plea nearly broke him. He wanted to promise her eternity, swear on every star in the sky that he'd never leave her side. But promises were cheap without action, and action required compromise. So instead, he squeezed her hand tightly and murmured, "We'll figure this out together." Together, however, became increasingly complicated. Silra wasted no time integrating Theo into their lives, assigning him tasks designed to test his resolve. One day, he was repairing a malfunctioning engine core alongside stoic Valeth engineers. The next, he was attending formal gatherings where diplomats from distant planets negotiated alliances over shimmering goblets of luminescent liquid. Each task pushed him further into their world, blurring the lines between guest and captive. Humor, surprisingly, became his coping mechanism. During a particularly tense dinner involving representatives from a reptilian species notorious for their short tempers, Theo accidentally spilled a tray of exotic fruit onto the floor. Rather than panic, he grinned sheepishly and quipped, "Guess I'm still getting used to zero-gravity dining." The room erupted in laughter, easing tensions and earning him a begrudging nod of approval from Silra. Yet, beneath the levity lay an undercurrent of tension. Silra's patience wore thin whenever Theo questioned her motives or suggested alternatives to her plans. "You are not Valeth," she snapped during one heated exchange. "Your ways are inefficient, chaotic. Why should I listen to you?" "Because I care about her," Theo shot back, gesturing toward Lyra. "More than politics or power. More than whatever game you're playing." Silra stared at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she turned away, muttering something in her language that Theo didn't catch. Later, Lyra confided in him that her mother had said, "Emotions cloud judgment." Whether it was criticism or acknowledgement, Theo couldn't decide. Amidst the chaos, moments of joy surfaced unexpectedly. One afternoon, Silra surprised them by organizing a tour of the ship's botanical gardens, a breathtaking expanse of floating islands teeming with alien flora. As they wandered through fields of flowers that sang when touched, Theo marveled at the harmony between nature and technology. Even Silra seemed softer here, laughing lightly as Lyra chased after a swarm of bioluminescent butterflies. "This place reminds me of Earth," Theo admitted, plucking a leaf that sparkled like frost. "Well, a better version of it." Silra studied him thoughtfully. "Perhaps there is hope for coexistence after all." Hope. Theo wasn't sure what to make of it. Hope implied trust, and trust felt dangerously out of reach. Still, he clung to it, clinging tighter with each passing day. Back on board Theo's modest spacecraft, preparations intensified. Though Silra had extended an olive branch, Theo remained wary, knowing full well that alliances forged under duress rarely lasted. Every corner of the ship buzzed with activity as he fortified defenses, recalibrated sensors, and stockpiled supplies. Lyra hovered anxiously, her luminous form dimming with worry. "You're scared," Theo observed gently, pausing mid-task to kneel beside her. "But we've faced worse, haven't we?" She nodded hesitantly, clutching a small figurine she'd crafted from spare parts, a crude representation of the two of them standing side by side. It was her talisman, a reminder of their unbreakable bond. Theo smiled, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Good. Then let's show them what we're made of." Their strategy revolved around stealth and subterfuge. Using decoy signals and holographic projections, they created the illusion of multiple ships approaching Silra's vessel. The goal was simple: distract her forces long enough to negotiate from a position of strength. If all went according to plan, they'd emerge victorious, or at least intact. As they neared the rendezvous point, however, complications arose. A sudden ion storm disrupted communications, scattering their carefully laid plans into chaos. Static crackled through speakers, drowning out vital updates. Panic threatened to creep in, but Theo steadied himself, drawing courage from Lyra's unwavering gaze. "We adapt," he declared firmly. Like always. Adaptation proved easier said than done. Without clear directives, Silra's fleet responded aggressively, launching probes and energy pulses that forced Theo to execute evasive maneuvers. The ship shuddered violently, throwing them both against the walls. Alarms blared, warning lights flashing crimson. "Hold on!" Theo shouted, gripping the controls with white-knuckled determination. Sweat dripped down his brow as he navigated through the storm, dodging debris and enemy fire with split-second precision. Beside him, Lyra clung to her seat, her eyes wide with terror yet resolute. Just when survival seemed impossible, a breakthrough occurred. A stray bolt of lightning struck one of Silra's cruisers, disabling its weapon system temporarily. Seizing the opportunity, Theo accelerated toward the crippled ship, broadcasting a distress signal masked as surrender. Confusion rippled through Silra's ranks, buying them precious seconds. It was then that fate intervened. Amidst the turmoil, a transmission breached the interference, a hauntingly familiar voice cutting through the cacophony. "Human, stop this madness." Silra's tone carried equal parts frustration and desperation. "You cannot win against us." Theo hesitated, torn between defiance and pragmatism. Winning wasn't necessarily about overpowering. Sometimes, it meant choosing battles wisely. With a heavy sigh, he activated the comms. "Then let's talk. Properly this time." Silence followed, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder. Then, slowly, Silra's response came through. Agreed. But come unarmed. Alone. No deal, Theo countered instantly. Lyra comes too. She's part of this. Another pause, longer this time. When Silra spoke again, her voice softened marginally. Very well. Bring her. But understand this, games end today. Games indeed. As Theo powered down weapon systems and prepared for boarding, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into another layer of complexity. This wasn't merely about protecting Lyra anymore, it was about forging a new path, one where trust replaced fear and unity transcended differences. Side by side, father and daughter boarded Silra's flagship, stepping into a chamber bathed in eerie blue light. Silra awaited them, flanked by advisors whose expressions ranged from skeptical to hostile. Tension crackled in the air, palpable and suffocating. Begin, Silra commanded tersely, gesturing toward a holographic table displaying star charts and tactical data. Negotiations unfolded haltingly, each party testing boundaries and probing weaknesses. Offers were made and rejected, counteroffers proposed and scrutinized. Emotions ran high, voices rising until echoes bounced off metallic walls. Yet, amidst the discord, seeds of understanding began to sprout. At one pivotal moment, Lyra stepped forward unexpectedly, addressing her mother directly. Her words, spoken haltingly but with conviction, resonated deeply. Family, not fight. Family, together. Silra faltered, visibly shaken. For the first time, cracks appeared in her stoic facade. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling silently down her cheeks. She reached out tentatively, cupping Lyra's face in her hands. My child, forgive me. Forgiveness didn't come easily, nor did solutions. Compromises required sacrifice, adjustments demanded flexibility. But inch by inch, progress emerged. Boundaries blurred, alliances shifted, and possibilities expanded. By the time discussions concluded, dawn had broken over Zithra's horizon, casting golden rays across landscapes once fraught with peril. Exhausted yet hopeful, Theo stood beside Lyra, watching as Silra issued orders to withdraw her fleet. Peace, tentative though it was, settled over the region. Yet challenges lingered. Questions remained unanswered, futures uncertain. Would integration succeed? Could disparate cultures coexist harmoniously? Only time would tell. But for now, amidst the ruins of conflict and the promise of renewal, hope prevailed, a fragile, radiant beacon guiding them forward. The atmosphere aboard Silra's flagship shifted subtly after days of grueling negotiations. Exhaustion hung heavy in the air, yet there was an undeniable sense of fragile progress. The tension that had once crackled like static electricity now felt muted, replaced by a cautious optimism neither side fully trusted but couldn't ignore. It was during one of these quieter moments, as Theo and Lyra prepared to return to their ship, that Silra approached them with an uncharacteristic softness in her demeanor. Gone was the commanding figure who had first confronted them. Instead, she stood before them as a mother burdened by choices no parent should have to make. Her voice, when she finally spoke, carried a weight that silenced even the hum of the ship's engines. There is only one path left, Silra began, her glowing eyes meeting Theo's with unwavering intensity. A union, not just for us, but for our people. For Lyra. Theo froze, his mind struggling to process her words. Marriage? To her? It wasn't something he'd ever considered, not even in his wildest imaginings. Yet here it was, laid bare on the table like a gauntlet thrown down at his feet. What are you saying? Theo asked cautiously, glancing at Lyra, who looked equally bewildered. Silra stepped closer, her movements deliberate yet tinged with vulnerability. You've shown me what I failed to see, that family transcends bloodlines and species. That love can bridge divides far greater than ours. But if we are to protect Lyra and ensure her future, we must do more than negotiate truces or share fleeting alliances. We must become one. Her words struck deep, stirring emotions Theo hadn't dared confront. He thought of all they'd endured together, the battles fought, the sacrifices made, the bond forged between him and Lyra that defied logic and convention. Could this truly be the answer? Was marriage the price of unity? Why? Theo pressed, his tone sharp but not unkind. Why would you agree to this? After everything. For the first time since they'd met, Silra hesitated. She lowered her gaze, her shimmering form dimming slightly as if weighed down by regret. Because I see now that my way, the Valeth way, was flawed. Strength without compassion is hollow. Power without connection is meaningless. You've taught me that, human. And for Lyra's sake, I am willing to change. Lyra tugged at Theo's sleeve, her small hand trembling. When he knelt beside her, she whispered urgently, "Do it. For me." Her large, luminous eyes pleaded with him, reflecting both fear and hope. Theo swallowed hard, torn between disbelief and resolve. This wasn't how he'd envisioned his life unfolding. A botanist from Earth, married to an alien queen on a distant planet? It sounded absurd, almost laughable. Yet, staring into Lyra's trusting face and seeing the sincerity in Silra's expression, he realized the decision wasn't about him anymore. It never had been. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "If this is what it takes to keep us together, to give Lyra the family she deserves, then yes. Let's do it." Silra exhaled sharply, relief washing over her features. For a moment, she simply stared at him, as if memorizing every detail of his face. Then, unexpectedly, she extended her hand, a gesture of trust and partnership. Theo took it, feeling a strange warmth radiate through their connection, not unlike the jolt he'd felt when he first touched Lyra. As word spread throughout the fleet, reactions varied. Some Valeth advisors balked at the idea of their leader uniting with a human, muttering dissent under their breath. Others, however, saw potential in the alliance, recognizing the symbolic power of such a union. Among them was Kale, Silra's second-in-command, whose stern exterior softened slightly as he addressed Theo privately. "She may be ruthless, but she loves fiercely," Kale admitted, his forearms crossed tightly across his chest. "And she has chosen you. Do not take that lightly." "I won't," Theo replied earnestly. "But tell me, if this doesn't work, if things fall apart, what happens then?" Kale's response was grim but honest. "Then we all pay the price. War will come again, and none of us will escape unscathed." The gravity of the situation settled heavily on Theo's shoulders. This wasn't just about personal happiness or familial bonds. It was about preventing further conflict, about forging a future where coexistence might actually be possible. Failure wasn't an option. Preparations for the ceremony were swift and elaborate, blending Valeth traditions with Earth customs Theo suggested. Silra insisted on incorporating elements from both cultures, ensuring the union symbolized not just their commitment to each other but also to bridging their worlds. Lyra played an integral role, helping design intricate patterns for the ceremonial attire and choosing music that resonated with both species. On the day of the wedding, the venue, a grand hall aboard Silra's flagship, was transformed into a breathtaking fusion of light and sound. Bioluminescent flora floated gracefully above rows of guests, casting ethereal glows across crystalline walls. Valeth musicians played haunting melodies alongside recordings of Earth jazz, creating a harmony that felt otherworldly yet deeply familiar. When Theo entered the hall, clad in robes adorned with shimmering threads that pulsed faintly with energy, he spotted Lyra immediately. She wore a miniature version of the traditional Valeth gown, her glowing form brighter than ever as she grinned up at him. Behind her stood Silra, resplendent in flowing garments that seemed woven from starlight itself. Her gaze locked onto Theo's, filled with a mixture of apprehension and determination. As they exchanged vows, words carefully crafted to honor both cultures, Theo felt a profound shift within himself. This wasn't just about duty or survival anymore. Somewhere along the way, he'd come to care for Silra, not as an adversary but as a partner striving to protect those she loved. And though their journey ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, he knew they could face them together. When the ceremony concluded, cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing through the vast chamber. Lyra ran to them, throwing her arms around both parents simultaneously. Tears streamed down Theo's face as he embraced her, realizing that against all odds, they'd built something extraordinary, a family bound not by blood or biology, but by choice and love. Yet even amidst the celebration, questions lingered. Could this fragile peace hold? Would others accept their unconventional union? And most importantly, could they navigate the complexities of blending two vastly different lives into one cohesive whole? Only time would tell. But as Theo looked around at the faces of those gathered, Valeth and human alike, he allowed himself a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they'd found a way forward.